Hello YouTube world, this is Mike Daddy 1911A1 with Shade Tree Survivals coming to you again with part 2 of our philosophy of survival videos. This one here, this part will be my creation. When I read off and went through the part 1 the other day, it got the juices flowing. The creative juice is flowing, and so I thought I'd give a shot at it myself. So without further ado, here we go. In part 1, I went over the meaning of worldview and the fundamental difference between a self-centered and other-centered worldview. Hopefully you got the point. If you haven't seen part 1 or didn't understand, the basic point was, unless you are a hermit, you probably live in a community. And as a member of a community, you are responsible to one extent or another for that community. It is, after all, probably made up of your family, your friends, your co-workers, and your neighbors. Just as importantly, the community is made up of their family, friends, neighbors, and co-workers. After all, we are all brothers and sisters in one way or another. If you do feel that you are responsible, like we do, then you subscribe to the other-centered worldview. Most folks, unfortunately, are not, nor will ever be, preppers. Okay? Most people worry only about the here and the now. Work, bills, family, friends, or the broke down car, leaky sink, whatever the case may be. What's going on right now, immediately, in their lives. Most cannot hunt, kill, clean, butcher, or cook a wild animal. Most people can't fish or even clean one if they had to. Why is that? Fish sticks, chicken McNuggets, your hamburger meat that you get down there, the steaks, it's already been cut, it's already been cleaned. Unless you're a country boy like myself, you've never seen where it actually comes from. You never had to raise the cow, give it the shots, do all the different things you have to do before it's time to take it to the slaughterhouse, blah, blah, blah. Or pigs or chickens or anything else. Most people probably never kill a chicken. Okay, wrung its neck or chopped its head off on a chopping block, and then either skinned it or scalded the feathers off of boiling water or whatever the case may be. Most people have never done that, so they have no idea where the chicken McNugget comes from. I mean, it doesn't look anything like a chicken, so they have no idea. Okay, these same people can't so much as start a campfire without matches or a gas lighter. And I'll be honest, up front and honest with you. It is very hard to do, and I would rather do it with a gas lighter or matches any day of the week myself. Therefore, I have prepared for that. I have waterproof matches, and I have a Zippo lighter with extra gas, extra flint, extra wicks for it, just because of that. Because as we all know, it's just not as easy to start a campfire as it is to turn a knob, flip the little wheel on a gas lighter, strike a match. So what does all this mean to us? The first question you have to ask yourself after you have decided to prepare yourself for whatever the world may throw your way is this: will your community, your family, your friends just be a useless, unprepared burden to you and your prepared friends? Okay, the question again. All right, think about this. Really think about this. Will your community and your family and friends just be a useless, unprepared burden to you and your prepper friends? The folks who go out in the woods and practice prepping with you, or prep right there in the city, wherever you may be. The answer to that question depends on your preparation and, more importantly, on your mindset. Okay? I think not. Myself, I really think that they're not going to be a burden, at least not in the long term. Though maybe in the short term, and here's why. Okay? Now keep an open mind here, listen and think what I'm telling you, this part. Because if you don't, you're going to miss the whole point. Most of us have heard of the United States Army Special Operations Group, also known as the Green Berets. Okay? When most people think of Special Forces, they think of Rambo. That is what is called direct action. Okay? Rambo, storming an airplane, shooting the bad guys up, storming a nuclear base, trying to blow, stop the missiles from flying, whatever. That's called direct action. Breaking into tough places and taking out hard targets is how I had it wrote. However, that is only the glamorous side of their jobs. Their job number one for Green Berets is that of a force multiplier. Okay, think about the wording of that. Force multiplier. They, from their very founding, were utilized to train guerrillas to fight the Nazis in occupied Europe during World War II. Later on in Vietnam, they did the same, and in recent history, our recent history, the Green Berets, along with Air Force Special Tactics units, were the first Americans to fight in Afghanistan against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Did you know that? Wasn't the 101st Airborne or the 82nd Airborne. It wasn't the Navy SEALs. It was not the Rangers. It was not the Marines. Okay? All these are fine fighting groups and all, but that's not what their specialty, where their specialty lies. Okay? That's where the Green Beret specialty lies. And this is why. Fighting alongside the Northern Lines and training and equipping its fighters to take the fight to the vastly more numerous enemy, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda together. They were thousands of them. Okay, in the first few months of the War on Terror, the Green Berets and the Air Force's Special Tactics units, and of course the bombers, the tactical fighter bombers like the F-18 and the different other types of aircraft like that, the stealth fighter bomber, the B-2 bombers, B-52s, and B-1s. Those are the bombers I'm talking about. They were the only American forces actually fighting the enemy. Until these Green Berets parachuted in and began training and fighting alongside the Northern Alliance, the Taliban had the Northern Alliance on the ropes and nearly defeated. The training and firepower that the Green Berets and the Air Force brought to bear quickly turned the tables. Later in Iraq, the Green Berets helped the Northern Kurds and other anti-Saddam forces that in turn helped the U.S. during the invasion. So though there were only a few hundred Green Berets at any one time actually on the ground fighting, they led and commanded literally thousands of fighters against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, and later against Saddam Hussein. The lesson here for us preppers, us folks out here, us survivalists, preppers, whatever you want to call it, the lesson here is simple. With our training and our skills, we can train others to help the entire community, and in short order, to be self-sufficient. Be force multipliers. That's the key right there. If you're training yourself how to survive in these situations, your friends are training themselves, like myself, Uncle Fester, Statue, Kimmo. Okay, we're acquiring skills over time. Now, I mean, we got a long ways to go. A long ways to go before we are in the neighborhood of a lot of you guys out there. But we're learning. And what we're trying to do is pass that on in little pieces, along to our family, our friends, our communities. Okay? It just takes time. Okay? Now back to the script here. Harsh, adverse conditions will motivate their community as long as you can lead them. Okay? They're motivated because they don't want to be wet anymore. They don't want to be cold anymore. They don't want to be starving. They don't want to be thirsty. All right? So they have the motivation. If they don't do something, they'll continue to be in that situation. Okay? As long as you can lead them, you or someone else. Okay? Untrained, frightened people will panic in a heartbeat if they don't have a strong leader who has his or her crap together. Whenever there is a disaster or other hugely disruptive event, one that destroys or overwhelms the normal social rhythm, the majority of people look for and to a leader to help them cope with their new reality. So, be a leader. Have a plan. Train and prepare yourself with the skills and tools to survive, and in doing so, people will look to you because you are already prepared. Before, during, and in its immediate aftermath, disasters tend to separate the sheep from the sheepdogs and the wolves from the rest of the pack. Okay? Sheep are the unprepared and the followers. Okay? It's not meant to be derogatory, but in reality, these are the same folks that they only think about the here and now. They don't ever think about tomorrow or what if situations. Okay? And they're always the ones that are the victims. And they're always, not only the disaster itself, but of the animals, the wolves out there, the human monsters that seek the weak to prey on them to take what they have for their own survival. Okay, that's what you're going to be fighting there in a situation without rule of law, or the SHI. Let's see, crap hits the fan. So SHI. SHTF, how about that? I'm going to do it CHTF. Crap hits the fan. Okay, sorry about that. But anywho, here we go. Priority one should be to focus the sheep, the unprepared and the followers, as I've already said, on the immediate task at hand, which is survival. However, the simple fact that you have your crap together and have survival gear in them will not automatically make you the leader. Okay? Having a plan and the guts and the know-how to implement will. Remember this also. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. Once you're in command, never allow the sheep time to be idle. Time to reflect on their loss. Okay? Whether it be their home, their automobile, their entire community gets wiped out by a tornado, whatever the case may be. You've got to keep them busy. You got to keep them focused on the right now. You've got to survive. Right now, you've got to build yourself some type of shelter. Right now, you've got to find food. You got to find water. Okay? Because if they just sit there and they break down, they'll be no use to anyone. And there'll be a drain on your supplies and everyone else's. Time to worry. Okay? Can't have time to worry. First thing you need to do is assess everyone's skill levels and put them to work and make them work. Gathering food, processing food, building shelter, building and maintaining a fire, building fortifications, building cisterns for collecting water in, growing a garden, hunting, dressing the meat, teaching or training with weapons, patrolling, taking care of children, or training with weapons. I think I've already mentioned that. Taking care of the children, elderly or the sick, repairing gear or equipment, and of course security. You know, all these things here and plenty of other stuff that you could have them doing. You find out what their skill level is, what they can do and can't do physically or mentally, put them to work. Another thing you might have to think about, disposing of bodies lying out in the open, create disease. Flies land on them, the flies land on you, the next thing you know, you've got, whatever kind of disease, dysentery, which is diarrhea, folks, okay? All these different things, if it's bad enough, you've got to bury the bodies, okay? And not just human bodies, dogs and cats and birds and whatever else, you've got to get rid of them. You got to dispose of them. And I'm not saying, in a survival situation, you may not have the manpower, you may not have the strength to bury them. Okay, you may have to pile them up and burn them, but you have to do something with that. There's a lot of different things like that you'd have to think about. And like I said in part one, Uncle Fester's idea that you cannot prepare for everything that's true. I mean, you sit there and you worry yourself sick and drive yourself crazy trying to think about it. Because, I mean, what if it's a comet hit the planet or a huge meteor? Okay? It's not much you're going to be able to do about that. My recommendation, and that was pray and then stick your head between your legs and kiss your butt goodbye, because more than likely. But anywho, so what happens if you don't find everyone a useful job? Fear, jealousy, sadness, whatever, can easily lead to panic or a riot. You must have basic laws and immediate punishment for violating them. Rationing of resources will probably be necessary, as I've already said, and you must be fair to everyone and never take or appear to take more than you allow others. Okay? You can't do that or you will have mutiny on your hands. When law and order is lost, the strong will take from the weak, and soon after the monsters will come out. Remember Katrina and its aftermath. In a complete social breakdown without rule of law, the monsters will become predators of their fellow man. Behavior that societal norms normally prevent, whether from social stigma or because they would be arrested for doing so, will quickly spring forth. Okay? Murder, rape, child molestation, arson, savage beatings, even more savage murders and dismembers, robbery, torture, you name it. I mean, you name it, it'll come out. They'll be killing just for the pure freaking pleasure of it. That's what they consider pleasure. They'll be killing just for the pleasure of it. Unrestrained, without police or military, to hunt them down, the scum will come out of the woodwork to prey on the weak. Okay, you're probably thinking, not me. However, remember General George Armstrong Custer. Okay? That little bighorn. Though he and his men were well armed and skilled, they were slaughtered by a vicious, yet brave and numerically superior force of American Indians. I think it was Cheyenne. And for instance, if there are 10 of you and 30 of them, you could easily be overrun. Okay? Or, if you outnumber the bad guys, but your community is poorly trained in combat tactics, you can lose. For instance, the thousands of Somalis versus the Task Force Ranger and the Chinese versus the United States Marine Corps at the Chosin Reservoir come to mind as prime examples of this. You had superior forces. I believe it was 6-1 against the Marines. 6 Chinese soldiers who were tough. They walked all the way from China there, okay, in the middle of the freaking winter. They were tough. They had great weapons. Their leadership wasn't the greatest in the world. Okay, and they couldn't coordinate as good as the Marines, and the Marines were just absolutely bad to the bone. You hear me? And they slaughtered the piss out of them. Same thing happened to the Somalis when they had the Delta Force guys and the Rangers surrounded after they shot the helicopter down in the movie Black Hawk Down, the book Black Hawk Down. That's a real incident. It actually happened. Okay? But those Rangers and those Delta guys, they held out. And I mean, they literally slaughtered thousands of the Somalis because the Somalis were not well trained. Okay? They had them surrounded, sure. But most of them walked out or drove out and lived to tell the tale. That's the difference. Okay? Onward and upward. Masked gangbangers, high on whatever they can lay their hands on, could overwhelm a small band in the right circumstances. We just covered that. Well, we covered it with General George Custer, George Armstrong Custer. Okay, you had a small, highly trained, with the most advanced weapons at their time, got absolutely slaughtered by the superior armed forces of the Indians, though the Indians didn't have the same types of training and all. But just because they don't have military training don't mean that they don't know what they're doing. And another thing, a lot of gang members are going into the military, going to Iraq and Afghanistan. They're getting combat experience. They know small infantry tactics, and they can eat your lunch if they got 30 or 40 guys against you. So what can you do about that? Therefore, banding together with as many survivors as possible Combining resources, skills, and most of all, training will breed unity and is a deterrent as well as a support network and should be a priority. So train, 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 all you people. Okay? The whole point behind talking about the Green Berets is you have soldiers that from the beginning, when they were first formed, the whole point was to have highly skilled, highly trained soldiers go in behind the enemy lines and help the counterinsurgents or the insurgents to train, teach them how to use weaponry, teach them tactics, teach them how to blow stuff up. Okay? So you took a group of 12, that's 18, you got 12 guys, they're all specialists. Each one of them had 3 or 4 different specialties that they are absolute experts in. They take these specialties and they train hundreds. And then these hundreds and those guys together train thousands and thousands and thousands. Okay, that's how it works. Same thing applies here. You have the training, you have the skills, a disaster hits, you can pass these skills on to other folks to help everyone survive. Everyone benefits from it. Because I'm here to tell you, if you isolate yourself in your own home or whatever, we're not sharing our supplies with you, we're not sharing our medicine with you, we're not sharing this, that, or the other, the mob will come and they will take it by force. It's as simple as that. You will eventually be overrun. So be a force for good. Be other oriented. Okay? Onward and upward. Okay. Also, require everyone to pull their own weight and share the burden of the community. Okay? Even someone in a wheelchair can stand watch or prepare food or watch children. Everyone must do some sort of work. Children can gather berries or firewood or weed the garden, sharpen knives. I mean, you know, kids are not dumb. They learn. They pick it up like a sponge. They learn just like that. They can gather vines and the different types of bark to make rope with and string. They can collect water, etc. You know, tons of different jobs kids can do. And I'm not talking about a 2-year-old, okay? I'm talking about children of all different ages. After a disaster, though, the psychological strain on people whose world has ceased to exist will be nearly overwhelming. Work will help heal the wounds, okay? And by giving them a purpose, they will feel more empowered and not helpless and hopeless, making them be and feel like an asset and not be or feel like the burden they may have been. And this includes the elderly, so don't forget the elderly. They have knowledge about canning foods, preparation of foods, fixing machinery, fixing, you know, carpentry, all kinds of things. Older people have life experience that us younger people do not have. And if you overlook them because of their age, you're a damn fool. Okay? Nearly everyone can contribute. So unless you are having to run for it, for survival, don't count these folks out. For instance, the 2 best mechanics I ever knew were both legally blind. Yet simply by touch could identify wrenches, bolts, nuts, screws, types and sizes of wire and associated connectors, as well as parts. Okay? Not only that, but they could do so better than I could with my 2010 vision. If you know anything about it, 2010 is better than perfect. Perfect vision is 2020, 2030 is worse, 2040 is worse, and so on and so forth. Of course, I was only 13 or 14 the summer I spent with these 2 extraordinary men. One was my dad, and the other was my Uncle Gene. My parents had divorced by the time I was 4, so I missed out on all that I could have learned from my dad and uncle. However, several years later, I moved in with my dad, and that's when I started to learn everything mechanical. I was fascinated at just how much my dad knew about. I was fascinated at how much my dad knew about so many different things. He was a qualified electrician, a plumber, a carpenter, a mason, an auto mechanic, and machinery mechanic, a farmer, and even an awesome cook. He was old school all the way. He had been a roustabout for Exxon and Mobil on offshore oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. and had worked on towboats pushing barges up and down the Mississippi River. Working on one such towboat is where he learned to cook. Finger licking good. Need I say more? Not everyone with disabilities will be as exceptional. However, everyone can contribute. And as I have already stated, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. Okay? The last subject I need to broach in this segment is also on leadership. If the crap hits the fan, always be wary of becoming a dictator. Police yourself. Do not be a tyrant. Listen and respect others' views and opinions, even if you disagree with them. No one is right all the time. Kings, queens, presidents, prime ministers, and governors all have advisors. So should you. Okay? It's especially trust the ones who disagree with you. Okay? You may not agree with them, and you may decide, if you are the leader, you may decide to go a different path. But the ones who got the balls, excuse my French, who have the guts to stand up to you and tell you you're wrong, or tell you that that is wrong, those are the ones you want to have behind you. The kiss butts, you don't want them, those kind of advisors, because those kind of advisors will let you get out of it. Okay, out of control. You don't want that. Maybe your local mayor or sheriff or whoever is still in charge, and you are an advisor to them. Do no harm should be your mantra. Okay? Advise and support them. Remember this. If there is rule of law, even a little bit, such as a mayor or sheriff trying to do the right thing, you support them and you help them. Because if you don't, and everything comes back together, you go to jail or you go to the gallows, one of the two. In closing, it is our earnest hope. Uh-oh. I have messed up here. Okay, let me try this again. In closing, it is our earnest hope that we never ever have to use the survival skills or gear that we have. And that is Mac Daddy 1911 talking about us here at Shade Tree Survivals. Only an idiot would ever want the crap to hit the fan. So forget Hollywood. Okay, forget it. Read a few history books. Listen to the survivors of disasters such as Katrina, or the survivors of the tsunamis that hit Japan and Indonesia, or the survivors of the earthquakes in Turkey and Pakistan and Mexico City and all the other places we've had major, massive earthquakes that really did a lot of damage in the last 10 or 20 years. Okay, read a few of the books by the survivors of the Nazis, or the white Russians who survived the communists, the red Russians, during the 1918, 1920, before the communists took complete control, and listen to what happened, and listen to or read about the survivors or the people who lived through Stalin's purges, okay, of the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and all this. Oh my God, and Mao, holy smokes. Very few Hollywood movies have any relation at all to reality. There's just pathetic, most of them, okay? Defiance, starring Daniel Craig, being one of the few in recent years that keep it real. It's a true story. The Way Back with Ed Harris, another good one. The Gray Zone with David Arquette. And the made-for-TV movie Uprising. And let's not forget Hotel Rwanda, and of course Schindler's List. These are a few movies that I watched. They're true stories. They keep it real. All right, not a whole bunch of massive freaking explosions like Hollywood. You know, has nothing to do with reality. They are based on true stories, and they really keep it real. So you should really try to watch those. Those who forget their history are doomed to repeat it. You remember that. And we forget, we think, well, it's the 21st century, the crap that the Nazis did, the communists did. That can't happen today. You might better want to open up and wake up and smell the coffee. Don't forget the genocide over there in Croatia. Okay, the continuing genocide going on in different parts of the world, like Chechnya, for instance. The Russians, they don't play around. They kill everything in sight. All right, which the Chechens, we tried diplomatically to help them out. And after 9/11, these Chechen Arabs, well, not Arabs, but the Muslims, they were supporting and fighting against us in both Afghanistan and in Iraq. Okay, so there's no love lost between me and them as far as I'm concerned. In closing, history's biggest lesson is those who care for their fellow humans tend to survive and thrive. In the 20th century, dictators came and went. Some, like Hitler and Mussolini and Tojo, were brought down by the Allied armies. Communist Russia, by the weight of its own flawed system and the corruption it bred. In this, the second decade of the 21st century, we have seen the fall of the Taliban, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, and Mubarak of Egypt. The Taliban and Hussein from without, and Gaddafi and Mubarak from within. Their own people brought them down, eventually. Those people in countries that stood against these tyrants fared much better, socially, financially, and as well as politically. Only when leaders become greedy and power-hungry tyrants or promise the ends of the earth to a hurting populace does evil thrive. There's always those who will blame bad things on innocent people. It is always easier to blame others rather than accept that sometimes bad things happen to all people. But that is a subject for another video. Uncle Fester's actually going to be doing that one. I believe we all will be judged for all of our actions as well as our inactions. Sin is sin. God doesn't judge one different from another. The Bible says the wages of sin is death. Apathy for our fellow humans, our fellow man suffering at the hands of another or by a disaster is as much a sin as putting a bullet in her head. The Bible also says, as a matter of fact, Jesus says this, greater love has no man than this, to lay down one's life for his friends. Love thy neighbor. God meant that. That is one of the 10 commandments. Love thy neighbor. God meant that. Okay? Being other-centered is loving thy neighbor. Evil in all its forms can only succeed when good men do nothing, whether out of fear or out of apathy. In the end, those who stand on the sidelines also will stand behind the wire. And if you're wondering what wire, then you definitely haven't read enough or got out in the world enough, and you do not know your history, and therefore I'm not even going to waste any time on that one. So help those in need. Vote. Okay? Get involved. Speak out against injustice. Speak up for that which you believe is right. Defend the innocent and the weak and those without a voice. Unborn children, anyone? Abortions? Do that and you can sleep soundly at night. And one more thing I need to add, and this is from the Bible. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. That is the thing we must all guard against. To allow evil to flourish for mere self-preservation, yet ultimately lose both this mortal life and eternal life through doing nothing. Hope you learned something. Hope this will just start another discussion. This is part 2 of Philosophy of Survival. Be a leader. Be a force multiplier. Help your fellow man. Okay? Well, this is MagDaddy 1911A1 with the Shade Tree Survival signing off. Y'all have a good night.